mas pinalakas na pagbabalita, komentaryong walang mintis, iba't ibang entertainment. Radyo natin to! Radyo natin to!
Palace mocked Sara, fix Davao floods first, give free advice to Baste. The palace says funds enough to evacuate Pinoys from Taiwan. Palace to Baste, what happened to flood control projects during your father's term? Puno says DepEd funds for school buildings off limits to Solons. Puno backs ethics case versus Richard Gomez. Puno on defies calls to resign over flood control scandal. Red Cross head says mass evacuation of Gaza City impossible. Gatchalian finds one flood control project with 4 identical budgets in NEP. And the DOJ indicts Abra mining execs for trading billions in fake shares. This and more on Newsline Weekend. Good morning, I'm Raymond Kaibigan. Newsline Weekend begins right now. And for those of you watching on Facebook and on YouTube, glad you could join us. Topping the weekend news, Palace Max Sara, fix Davao floods first, give free advice to Baste. Malacanang has turned the tables on Vice President Sara Duterte, saying her flippant remarks on charging the government a consultation fee for her advice on flood control only highlighted her lack of sincerity in helping the government address one of the country's most pressing problems. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the Vice President's free advice would be better given to her brother, Davao City Acting Mayor Sebastian Baste Duterte, whose own city is still beset with perennial flooding. Davao, which has been under the Duterte's grip for nearly 4 decades, remains flood-prone, with the City Engineering Office identifying at least 265 areas that are perennially underwater. Ayaw niyang magbigay ng free advice para sa bansa. Kung may natutunan na siyang solusyon sa pagsugpo sa problema sa pagbaha sa bansa, sa dami ng kanyang biyahe, ibigay na lang niya ang free advice niya kay Baste, Castro said in a press briefing conference on Friday. Abangan na lang natin kung epektibo at kung di na babaha sa kanilang lungsod, she added. In an interview in The Hague, Duterte had made light of questions about flood control practices that she had observed abroad, dismissing the matter by saying that she was not the Marcos administration's free consultant. The vice president even suggested that the government consult overseas of Filipino workers, whom she described as the best consultants. Duterte said Davao City had stopped foreign experts for its drainage and flood control systems, but complained that the Department of Public Works and Highways had shown no interest in funding the projects. Meanwhile, Malacanang on Saturday challenged Davao City Acting Mayor Sebastian Baste Duterte to update the public on the status of nearly 14,000 flood control projects that were implemented during the term of his father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, asking whether these were still effective in addressing the country's perennial flooding. Presidential Communications Office Secretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro made the remarks in response to the Duterte's criticism of the Marcos administration amid the issues involving the government's flood mitigation program. The mayor had criticized President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for conveniently shifting the blame to other public officials and private contractors for the pervasive corruption in the bureaucracy. But Castro responded by questioning the younger Duterte's credibility, given the Duterte family's decades-long political control over Davao, which remains one of the country's most flood-prone areas. Castro dared Duterte to update the public on the status of 13,970 flood control projects that were funded during his father's administration, as she questioned whether these projects have had a lasting impact. She added that the president remains open to any decent suggestion, even from his critics, but emphasized that criticisms without actionable solutions would not help resolve the issue. Ang maaari nilang maitulong sana ay ipaalam sa mamamayan ang 13,917 na flood control projects ng nakaraang administrasyon para malaman ng lahat kung existing, operational, effective ba ito sa problema ng baha at kung nararamdaman ba natin ang mga proyektong ito ngayon at noong mga nakaraang taon, Castro said. In other news, the government has sufficient funds to evacuate Filipinos from Taiwan should China invade the island nation or be caught in the middle of a military conflict, according to Malacanang. Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro made the assurance when asked about contingency plans for overseas Filipinos in Taiwan. Castro echoed the statement of Foreign Affairs Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro, who earlier told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that the government had preparations in place. Tama po si DFA Secretary Lazaro na mayroon pong contingency plan, so nothing to worry. Kasi nagawa na rin po natin ito noong nagkaroon ng issue sa Israel. Wala sa budget pero nakaya po natin, Castro told the press briefing on Friday. Pressed if additional funding would be needed for repatriation, she replied, hindi naman po kailangan. During the Senate hearing, some lawmakers raised doubts that the government could afford to repatriate the nearly 170,000 Filipinos staying in Taiwan in case of conflict. Lazaro assured the senators that the DFA and other agencies had been coordinating on a possible evacuation. A Department of Migrant Workers has 1.2 billion pesos in its action fund for repatriation costs, separate from the DFA's own assistance fund for distressed Filipinos abroad. In other news, House Deputy Speaker and Antipolo City Representative Ronaldo Puno on Friday rejected Vice President Sara Duterte's claim that lawmakers were dividing among themselves the funds for school buildings, saying members of Congress have no power to tinker with the Department of Education's classroom construction program. Puno said the budget process would make such a practice implausible since the projects listed in the National Expenditure Program, or NEP, come from agency proposals consolidated by the Department of Budget and Management. Unlike the Department of Public Works and Highways, which sets aside funds for district infrastructure, the DepEd implements a nationwide program that lawmakers cannot alter, he explained. He also added that the only portion of the budget where lawmakers may suggest projects was the DPWH fund for congressional districts, limited to small infrastructure such as footbridges and farm-to-market roads. Ang rason dyan is kasi doon sa NEP na binibigay ng DPWH sa DBM, meron portion doon that are for local infrastructure projects, he said. Wala kaming nabibigay na suggestions on national projects. For example, national highways, national buildings, ala kaming karapatan gumawa doon. So doon naman sa DepEd, wala namang kapasidad din ang congressman mag-initiate except pag kinonsulta sila ng DepEd, Puno added. House Speaker and Antipolo City Representative Ronald Puno on Friday backed the filing of an ethics complaint against Leyte Representative Richard Gomez for accusing journalists of being paid to ask him about a damaged flood control project linked to him. Yeah, absolutely. I encourage you to bring it before the ethics committee here, Puno said at a press conference. Hindi naman pwedeng yung mga ganun, you are asked to explain something, you are a legislator, you explain. Kaya tayo naging legislator dahil ang tingin ng tao, marunong tayong magpaliwanag. Tapos yung ganyan na personal na, napakalino na kailangan mong ipaliwanag, hindi niya gagawin, he added. Several reporters had reached out to Gomez regarding the allegations made by Matag-Ob Leyte Mayor Bernie Tacoy that he was providing limited support to their locality amid recurring floods. Instead of replying, Gomez posted screenshots of their conversation on Facebook, exposing the journalist's phone numbers. Puno, who chairs the National Unity Party, the second largest political party in the House, criticized Gomez for his actions. And then you compound the issue by insulting people. Hindi maganda talaga yon. I think the ethics committee should be brought into that, he said. He reminded lawmakers that public officials are expected to meet higher standards of behavior. Ako, I'm very disappointed to hear these things at malungkot na nangyari yung mga ganyan. Legislators or congressmen, senators, you know we are elected into our positions by people that trust us, express their faith in what we say, express their faith in what we do, and what we can do, Puno added. Puno said that he was very sad that those things are happening. Coming up next on Newsline Weekend, Bonoan defies calls to resign over flood control scandal. Red Cross head says mass evacuation of Gaza City impossible. Gatsagan finds one flood control project with 4 identical budgets in NEP. And the DOJ indicts Abra mining executives for trading billions in fake shares. You're still tuned in to Newsline Weekend. We will be right back after the break.
Jemalyn. Hapon na mukhang fresh ka pa din. Ay, baho lang ng anit.
Mabahong anit? Look new Head & Shoulders every day. Para kahit malapit, fresh ang anit.
Jemalyn, fresh ka na. Sa hapon man o sa malapitan.
New Head & Shoulders for 100% dandruff-free hair. No visible flakes with regular use.
Hello, Washi! Laundry day na naman!
Yay! Anong meron?
Mancha ng chocolate, putik, may libag pa.
Kaya natin yan! With Pride Washing Machine Detergent, may triple stingray formula. Tanggal ang makapit, madikit, at madupis na init mancha. Kaya easy-easy ang lavada.
Mula noon, hanggang ngayon.
All you need is pride. All you need is pride. ACS. Kaya na everyone. Iwan ang distraction. Magic ang dahilan. Focus sa moment with friends. ay daming activities. Kaya breakfast pa lang, give them champion energy.
Want Milo breakfast every day, Milo breakfast every day.
Help jumpstart your day with a balanced diet, healthy lifestyle, and an energized, nutritious breakfast with Milo. May winning combination of milk, champion energy nutrients, at Chocolate sarap.
Want Milo breakfast every day, Milo breakfast every day. Helps you jumpstart your day, Milo every day. Dalawa, tatlo,
Sinong mananalo?
apat, lima, anim.
Fix na natin.
Vicks Vapor Rub, nagbibigay ginhawa mula sa 6 na sintomas ng sipon.
Walang sila, mabuti ng pakiramdam.
Vicks Vapor Rub is available in Pure Gold stores nationwide. Visit your nearest branch now.
I-fix na natin. Mabuti ng pakiramdam.
You are still tuned in to Newsline Weekend. I'm Raymond Kaibigan. Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan on Saturday rejected calls for his resignation amid a widening investigation into the alleged multi-billion peso irregularities in the flood control projects of the Department of Public Works and Highways. In a video message, the beleaguered cabinet official admitted that he was hurt by the controversy involving substandard and alleged ghost projects, but said stepping down was not the appropriate response. Nakakasikip po ito ng dibdib at napakasakit pong tanggapin ang mga nangyayaring ito sa ilalim ng aking panunungkulan kahit ano po ang higpit at istrikto ng ating mga pulisiya laban sa katiwalian, Bonoan said. Mayroon niyang nananawagan sa akin na ako raw po ay mag-leave o kaya po'y mag-resign dahil sa isyong ito. Iyan po sana ang madaling gawin. Pero hindi po ang pag-alis o pag-iwas sa responsibilidad ang tamang paraan ng paghahanap ng solusyon, he added. The DPWH chief said he was ready to accept accountability as he reiterated that he would not tolerate corruption. He vowed that those behind the graft reading projects, whether DPWH officials or contractors, should be prosecuted. Despite the scandal, he stressed that the DPWH had more competent personnel than erring ones and called on the public to help expose anomalies in the department. Kaya po kami nananawagan na magtulong-tulong tayo. Taas noo ko pong sinasabi sa inyong lahat, mas marami po ang matitino at mahuhusay na mga tao sa DPWH, he said. In other news, the head of the International Red Cross on Saturday denounced Israel's plans for a mass evacuation of Gaza City ahead of a military takeover, insisting there were no way it could be done safely. It is impossible that a mass evacuation of Gaza City could ever be done in a way that is safe and dignified under the current conditions, International Committee of the Red Cross President Mirjana Spoljaric said in a statement. Such an evacuation would trigger a massive population movement that no area in the Gaza Strip can absorb, given the widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure and the extreme shortages of food, water, shelter, and medical care, she warned. Her comments came after Israel's military on Friday declared Gaza City a dangerous combat zone as it prepared to conquer the occupied Palestinian territory's largest city after almost 2 years of war. The Israeli military did not call for the population to evacuate immediately, but the army's Arabic language spokesman, Avichai Adrai, said on Wednesday that the city's evacuation was inevitable. Israel is under mounting pressure at home and abroad to end its devastating offensive in Gaza, where the vast majority of the population has been displaced at least once, and the United Nations has declared a famine. The UN estimates that nearly 1 million people currently live in Gaza Governorate, which includes Gaza City and its surroundings in the north of the territory. An evacuation order would be imposed on civilians who are already traumatized by months of fighting and terrified by what could come next, is Polar Jarik said. Many are unable to comply with evacuation orders because they are starving, sick, injured, or suffering from physical disabilities. She pointed out, stressing that all civilians are protected by international humanitarian law, whether they live or stay behind, and must be allowed to return home. Principal Jarek highlighted that IHL requires that when evacuation orders are issued, Israel must do everything to ensure that civilians have satisfactory conditions of shelter, hygiene, health, safety, and nutrition, and the families are not separated. These conditions cannot currently be met in Gaza, she said. This makes any evacuation not only unfeasible but incomprehensible under the present circumstances. The IRC president reiterated the call for an immediate ceasefire, a mass influx of aid, and for Palestinian group Hamas to release its remaining Israeli hostages. Any further escalation of the conflict will only lead to more death, destruction, and displacement, she added. News going back home, a planned flood control project received 4 separate allotments in the proposed 2026 national budget, each with exactly the same amount, a red flag that Senator Sherwin Gatchalian believes would cast doubt on the integrity of the national expenditure program. In a radio interview on Saturday, Gatchalian expressed concerns over the allocation after uncovering the suspicious budget item while reviewing some 4,000 flood mitigation projects in the 6.79 trillion peso spending program, including the DPWH allotment of 881.3 billion pesos. He said the DPWH, already embroiled in a political firestorm over its corruption-plagued infrastructure program, had set aside 270 million or billion pesos for flood control projects next year. For me, this raises a red flag on the budget process of the DPWH, Gatchalian said. Without providing specific details, he said the infrastructure project located in the same barangay and municipality was allocated the same amount 4 times. The senator, who will be sponsoring and defending the national budget as chair of the Senate Finance Committee, said he had already sought the assistance of a group of engineers to help them review the proposed infrastructure project in the NEP. The amounts are the same. This is surprising because it's just one project located in one barangay and in one municipality. But it was divided into 4 and the amount was the same for each, Gatchalian said. If you're doing a project, it's impossible for the amount to be the same, especially for flood control projects. There's a deep part, a shallow part of a bend, so the amount won't be the same, he pointed out. Senator Panfilo Lacson had earlier revealed the corrupt politicians and their cohorts in the DPWH deliberately inserted near identical amounts across different infrastructure projects as a way to tag which ones belonged to particular proponents. And finally, the Department of Justice has ordered the indictment of Abra Mining and Industrial Corp., its directors, officers, stocks transfer agents, and several stockholders over their involvement in the allegedly fraudulent trading of shares from 2015 to 2019. In a statement on Saturday, the Commission, or Securities and Exchange Commission, said the DOJ issued a resolution on August 12, finding sufficient evidence to charge the mining company and its executives and shareholders for violating the Securities Regulation Code and the revised Corporate Code. The alleged illegal share trading of AR was first exposed by Billionary.com in Feb 2021. The DOJ acted on a complaint filed by the SEC, which found that AR issued shares exceeding those registered with the state regulators and listed on the Philippine Stock Exchange. Among those indicted were company officers James G. Beloy, Amelia G. Beloy, Premi Ann G. Beloy, and Joel Albert G. Beloy. Also implicated were AR stocks Transfer Agent, Asian Transfer and Registry Corp., and several stockholders and entities including Joseph M. Acuesta, Ferdinand Collado, Laila Collado, Susan May Gacelo, Andre Vincent Freight Services Corporation, and Jubileum Air and Sea Logistics Incorporated. The SEC discovered that AR had issued shares far beyond the 95 million registered with the regulator and the 72.9 billion authorized for listing on the PSE. As of Feb 2021, nearly 259 billion shares had been lodged with the Philippine Depository and Trust Corporation. The DOJ said the scheme was designed to deceive the investing public with unauthorized shares traded as legitimate stock to generate massive profits for the respondents. It also faulted Asian Transfer for failing to monitor the insurance or issuance of AR's shares. Earlier, the SEC imposed more than 560 million pesos in fines on AR. Its executives, stockholders, and agents were also disqualified from serving as officers or directors of any entity engaged in issuing registered securities. A quick roundup of today's headlines. Palace Maksara fix double floods first, give free advice to Baste. The palace says funds enough to evacuate Pinoys from Taiwan. Palace to Baste, what happened to flood control projects during your father's term? Puno says deficit funds for school buildings off limits to Solons. Also, Puno backs ethics case versus Richard Gomez. Puno defies calls to resign over flood control scandal. Red Cross head says mass evacuation of Gaza City impossible. Gatchalian finds one flood control project with 4 identical budget in the NEP. And the DOJ indicts Abra mining executives for trading billions in fake shares. And those are the stories making headlines today, August 31, 2025. For Newsline Weekend, I'm Raymond Kaibigan. Keep it here on Radyo Natin to 10:35. Rise and Shine Weekend is coming at 6 a.m. Good morning.